Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Beth McCuskey, and I'm the Vice-Provost for Student Life at Purdue University and serving as a moderator this afternoon as we talk about well-being and mental health in our community. I am also a Vanguard donor and find that the work of the United Way is so crucially important to the health and well-being of our community. And today we're going to be joined by several members of our community who have special emphasis in the areas of mental health. At Purdue University, one of the things I'm responsible for is really working with our students in community. And so helping forge those communities that really help students feel engaged and feel part of something that's bigger than themselves. And of course, mental health plays an enormous role in that. So I am just pleased to be here today to be able to participate in this panel and would like to now start introducing our panelists. First, Brandi Christiansen serves as President and CEO of Mental Health America. Brandi, welcome.
Thank you, Beth.
Next, we have Zoe Frantz, who's our Chief Strategy Officer for Valley Oaks Health.
Hi, thank you, Beth.
Thanks for being here. Sheri Moore joins us, and Sheri is the Executive Director of NAMI for West Central Indiana.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome. And finally, we're joined by Jenni Murtaugh, who's the Executive Director of Willowstone.
Hi, Beth. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions here. We do have several on the front end, and we really want our conversation today to be very conversational, very inspiring, to learn from each other, and even to ask questions of each other. So we want to keep this super informal. Also know that we want to encourage anybody who's listening live to submit questions. So we have a comment feature that you can reach out and share those comments. I will be out checking on those occasionally to be able to kind of factor them back into the conversation. So we're going to go ahead and start, and this is a wide open question, so whoever wants to jump in. There's been a lot of conversation around mental health for the last 5 years. Are we moving the needle in terms of securing more people and resources to help? Who'd like to jump in? Feel free.
I know Zoe is kind of chomping at the bit, but I'll just go ahead and just say that in terms of a mental health provider shortage, we are still in a critical state. So no, we are not. We're not growing any here locally. Although I know that they've made some strides with the psychiatric nurse program at Purdue with the help of NCHS and the Daybreak Rotary. But even in terms of bachelor level mental health providers, the labor shortage is real, and the problems obviously didn't get any better in a pandemic.
And I would just have to echo what Brandi said, along with, we are moving the needle, I feel, from the data that I've seen regarding treating people with mental illness or substance use. I know at Valley Oaks, our intakes have gone up by about 60% since COVID, as well as our crisis center calls have increased significantly. So there are definitely, when we're moving the needle, I think about that. Yes, I think we are having conversations at the dinner table regarding mental health, and that stigma, even though it's still there, it's now talked about, and that people are able to get help. Now the concern is getting the workforce in place. One of the other things about moving the needle that kind of stuck out to me that I want to hit on is I think we're addressing the needs, but there is definitely our minority groups. There's still such disparity, and especially in our rural markets. A lot of our rural areas have minority groups, and so trying to reach them and meet that mental health need has definitely been something that's been challenging in moving the needle.
Any other thoughts on where we are in terms of mental health? Are we moving the needle?
Well, I do believe that having the conversations more often that the pandemic kind of had everybody thinking about is definitely a step in the right direction. And so when we, in the question, say we've had a lot of conversation, more conversation is important about well-being and ways, even non-clinical ways, that we can support one another in mental health and not be afraid to say we need help.
Several of you mentioned the pandemic. One of the things that I think is on everybody's mind is what does life look like post-COVID, right? And so as we think of things from a mental health perspective, I think we've seen some data that suggests that perhaps mental health demand has increased during the pandemic. At Purdue, we have actually seen a decline in requests for services, though we suspect that people were undergoing stress, anxiety. I mean, the things that all of us were feeling. What should we expect post-COVID, assuming that we're in the COVID's in our rearview mirror as we enter kind of new normal? What kind of things do you anticipate seeing in this space, and has COVID changed that?
Well, I think COVID has really opened some people's eyes, because people who normally not experience depression or anxiety have now experienced that. So I feel like there's a window of opportunity for mental health to bring it to the forefront and provide services. And just to go back to the last question, I feel like we are not moving the needle. We have more demand than we can provide service, and people are on waiting lists. And no fault at any of our agencies, we're working our tails off, but there's just not enough staff to cover the demand. And people, I just had a gentleman come in today saying he needs his injection, but in a week, and he just came from Wisconsin. And I get it, transient people, hey, they're here though, let's take care of them. But how long is it going to take to get to see a doctor? I always say we criminalize mental health, because if he goes into a mental health crisis, we're going to have to call the police, then they go to the jail, and then that's our new psychiatric hospitals. So I'm hoping COVID has opened some people's eyes and their hearts and their understanding of mental health, that it affects all of us. And we are in a dire straight crisis as a community.
Zoe, I believe you might have some information, some data that might be helpful to look at. Is that or is it something you'd like to share at this point?
Sure. So I when preparing for this presentation, can everyone see that okay? There we go. This information came from the CDC regarding COVID, but during late June, 40% of U.S. adults reported struggling with mental health or substance use. And it breaks down the various percentages regarding anxiety, depression, trauma, stress-related, and then also started our increased substance use. That's one area that, for me, we were making great grounds on as a community prior to COVID. The community has a wonderful collaborative group through United Way's efforts, NAMI's efforts, Mental Health America, Valley Oaks, Willowstone, a number of providers that have come together to try to solve some of these community issues and help move the needle. And so we were seeing improvement in those overdose rates pretty significantly before COVID. And so to see that these percentages are going up again. I do have good news on that, though. As a state, we saw overdoses go up by 30%. And in Tippecanoe County, compared to prior year, we stayed flat. And I do believe it's because of the collaborative efforts of everyone on this call, as well as our community peer-based program through Phoenix Paramedicine. And so I love seeing, that we were able to hold steady in our own county, but I do have those concerns outside of Tippecanoe.
One of the things that has come up several times now, so I want to kind of go down a slightly different path. the whole concept of practitioners and getting people engaged in this profession. Are you aware of any activities in this space in terms of how to get more people interested in this career path? Or are there things that we might be able to do differently as a community to promote opportunities in this space?
Yeah, we just did a wonderful career panel where a number of us were at the Greater Lafayette Career Academy, and we educated those students on what a career is in mental health or substance use treatment. And that was a wonderful engagement. And then also, Beth, being at Purdue, we have been advocating and working with Purdue, and I know some seeds have been planted regarding starting a social work program through IU's efforts. That would be life-changing for this community if we could start that, because that's really where we're seeing a lot of the workforce shortage is in our licensed clinicians. Also in our psychiatrist, our average psychiatrist age in the state is age of 70. And so that brings some concern from a recruitment standpoint, but that's where the Purdue Nurse Practitioner Program has been so wonderful for our community.
Any other insights in recruiting or training or how to bring people forward?
It's just a long-term effort. So we have, like at Willowstone, for example, we've said, okay, how can we contribute to that? And, you know, it takes a lot of resources to do clinical supervision for master's level people trying to become licensed. And so how can we do better at that? So, you know, we'll take on 2 instead of 1 and really work hard to do what little we can do to do our fair share. And then I will say we've had discussions about the pandemic also impacting that the master's level people aren't even, who are typically ready for that kind of supervision, still haven't had their internships. And so there's even a lag in current students being able to be out in the field with us. So it's an intricate problem with really some long-term solutions.
I hadn't even thought of that, but that is a huge issue in terms of just how disruption occurred to education itself and people's ability to do some of the things that they needed to do to advance. And so we're seeing that as a gap now too, just simply people not able to finish that credential to get out into the workforce. So hopefully that will evolve quickly as people are back to normal, at least. You know, some of the data that we saw, I think some of the incidents of anxiety, for example, or, you know, even, you know, some of the things we're seeing are stress levels or depression. Are these, is your sense that these are momentary gaps? And as we get back to kind of more normal of an environment, that will go back to kind of pre-COVID? Or are we here for a long haul in terms of the impact of COVID? What's your thoughts there? I know nobody has a crystal ball, but what's your sense of where this might go?
We don't have a crystal ball, Beth, but what we do have is some pretty striking data nationwide and statewide and even regionally that has shown us that, you know, prior to the pandemic, we all sort of, you know, joke about it, or not joke about it because it's kind of serious, but the pandemic before the pandemic. And so, you know, our young people in particular were struggling before COVID-19. And so, you know, you talk about the gaps that Jenni just talked about in terms of people not getting their internships. And a lot of these students have been going to school online. They already had depression, anxiety. And the numbers have increased. They've increased by about 5 to 7 percentage points when we're talking about regional anxiety levels, depression levels, and the increase in people screening for bipolar on our website. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere per se. It's typically been younger people, but that's to be expected because, the onset of mental health disorders are generally in that 11 to 17 and sometimes up to 24-year-old individuals for anxiety and depression and different personality disorders. So I think that the data that we're looking at indicates that this is a long-term problem that we're going to be dealing with, for quite a while.
And if you think about the mental health continuum as going from healthy to actually reacting, to actually being injured, and then to actually being ill, I mean, people who were injured pre-pandemic are now really down the continuum to ill by and large, because now the problems they were working on before have been set aside. So that creates an increase in severity, because if we have a mental health issue that we are not treating, it does, like a physical condition, get worse. So then there are some folks who have been reacting, have been in that second layer for a while. So they've been reacting and have become injured. And so they need a little more extra care. But there is also a kind of population that we're seeing who have been distracting themselves throughout the pandemic, trying to survive. And so they've gone where they seemed healthy throughout the pandemic and can now not be in survival mode. We're actually reacting and are now jumping right to injured. So it doesn't seem like anxiety or depression are going to ease up anytime soon, but we can be resilient. We can help build resilience, and some of those things can be self-care and social support. But once you're jumped to injured and ill, you really kind of need professional care.
Well, and that's an interesting way to look at it too. And I think as someone who is not, my background is not in mental health, are there strategies that we can look at within our own community, within our workplaces, educational institutions that aren't necessarily for the injured and ill, but possibly to try to ward some things off on the front end? So any thoughts there, any strategies that all of us who aren't practitioners might be able to consider?
Well, at Willowstone, we acknowledge the mind-body connection. So it's important to recognize that lacking physical health negatively impacts your mental health and vice versa. So if you're having mental health issues, your physical health often suffers. We really think of wellness as having kind of 4 components, and that's awareness and connection and insight and purpose. And so we try to frame our programming around that type of wellness. So understanding that we have to work on prevention and early intervention, as well as treatment for the mild mental illness, the moderate mental illness. We try to do that in parallel because you can never stop preventing. For example, connection. It's that feeling of care and kinship to other people. So promoting supportive relationships, we do that. Sometimes there's a practice we use in therapy called 30 minutes of compassion meditation. And so therapists use a tool that train people to do 30 minutes of that a day over a couple of weeks. And studies show that results in changes in people's caring behaviors, so that they're better able to form connected, impactful, positive relationships. And for example, we train our brains of parents in our parenting workshops to ask parents to try to give 10 positive comments to their child for every 1 negative piece of feedback. that helps build that positive relationship building skill that, builds stronger brains, trains the parents' brains, and really helps the wellness of the relationship within the family. So we have exercises in all of our therapies and all of our workshops that kind of help build those skills for wellness within the person.
At NAMI, we are believe very strongly in that connection Jenni was talking about. Everything that we do is peer-led, and our office is called The Landing, and through a grant through the United Way, we were able to create this space where we have organized activities throughout the day. And before COVID, we were really going strong with lots of participation. Of course, that died down during COVID, but we just had our first craft club this afternoon in person. So you ought to heard the hugs and the seeing people for the first time since a year, that they were so happy to be back together. But it's that connection, and that I like the holistic approach, but I really think the social part of that, being socially connected to another human being, is vital for all of us. And so at The Landing, that's what we do, and we have, it's peer-led, it's peer-driven, and it's magic in here. I invite everybody to come in and take a look at it.
Thank you. So much of what I'm hearing, one of our initiatives at Purdue is called Steps to Leaps, and it's really kind of focusing on well-being as a whole, and it's grounded in 5 pillars, and one of those pillars is networks, and that's so crucial, how you build that network, not networking, not going to cocktail parties and meeting people, but how you build that social fabric of your life, and giving back to it too. It's not just people there to support you, it's how you give back to that network. I think that's so important. So as we switch a little bit, one of the topics of our discussion today is on well-being. So can we think about well-being for a moment? How do you define it? And do you have any good examples of how organizations or entities are supporting well-being in our community?
Well, I think Jenni did a great job explaining well-being, and what I think all of us would probably agree with the addition of connections. And there are many great things taking place in each of our organizations to help with that well-being and that promotion. Some of the things that came to mind when I thought of this question is Valley Oaks was awarded a grant through SAMHSA, the federal administration, for a comprehensive community behavioral health program, which is going to be integrating physical health with mental health. And so I'm really excited to be able to address, like Jenni said, the physical and the mental. For so long, we've been operating in our silos. And I think until we really bring that together and address the whole person, that we're not going to be able to move the needle, as we said earlier. Another great statewide initiative that a lot of us are involved in is the 988. For those of you who have not heard about 988, that is going to be a number that the state is rolling out for crisis response. And like Sheri said earlier about calls sometimes have to be through the police and judicial legal, and that's not the best thing. For those with mental illness, 988 is going to have a clinical mental health component with mobile response teams and the right people to be able to answer that call when someone is in crisis. And that really is going to build wellness. I also think a lot of us have stepped up our support groups to help with connections. Like Sheri was saying, NAMI offers several groups to be able to bring people in, whether it's crafting or whether it's just sharing, one story to another. It's very powerful. So those were some of the things that I thought of community-wise that I think will support wellness in our community.
Yeah, this is all really great stuff. So Mental Health America about 4 years ago began maybe it was 5 years ago, began the before stage 4 philosophy, which basically states that, mental illness is the only disease that we wait until stage 4 to begin treating due to stigma. And so, that obviously that leads to really long periods of time between the onset of a mental health challenge and when someone actually seeks help for it. So when we I think what COVID has done for mental health is that it has shown us that maybe the idea used to be that mental health or mental illness was for individuals with significant mental illnesses, significant challenges, and then you had the worried well over on the other side. And now we can see from the data that Zoe presented from the CDC and from our own experiences and our own friends and families that people are significantly impacted, particularly, as Jenni stated, individuals who had pre-existing conditions or early childhood trauma. So I think it's really great when we talk about the initiatives that we're able to do as a community, and knowing that, yes, Jenni and Willowstone have all these great parenting groups, and Sheri has the Landing, and Valley Oaks has all of these other programs. And generally, peer programs are becoming more and more popular, not just with 988 coming down and perhaps as an answer to the critical provider shortage, but also because people want to connect with people who they identify with. And that's why peer services are so important, because they're individuals with lived experience who have traversed a path of adversity when it comes to mental health or substance use disorder. And the quicker that we can connect individuals that are struggling to people like that, the better outcomes we're going to have. And that's true with any, like stage 1 of anxiety. Let's talk about when is this potentially a problem? When is anxiety and depression something that I should check myself out for, right? We call it getting a checkup from the neck up. And, it's really anything that affects our ability to participate in our daily lives and enjoy our relationships, go to work, go to school longer than 2 weeks. And so what was really great about MHA National gave us this gift, and we provide it here regionally and locally for our communities, are the online screenings. So if you don't know, or if you think you might be starting to experience symptoms of depression or substance use disorder, or eating disorder, 9 total different disorders, you can just go in the comfort of your own home, anonymous, check on the website and take a quick screening and see if you're at risk. So I think that there are so many opportunities. I mean, people are really putting mental wellness at the forefront, workplace wellness. I think that there's a plethora of opportunities out there for people to get that early intervention and prevention education, which I know a bunch of us also provide. Sorry, that was a little long. I'm pretty passionate. I just got back from conference.
No, that's incredible. And your comments about peers, I think that is an excellent opportunity for all of us to tap into networks of people who would like to help. Ideas, strategies, how to recruit people, and then if folks are listening that want to help, how do they jump on and help?
Well, Sheri, you want to answer that because you have that peer program from how to connect people?
Yeah. So anyone who has a lived experience or any type of experience, I think you could contact any one of us and we could use you in each of our programs. But specifically for us, I mean, that's pretty much strictly who we use is the people that have the lived experience. And we want to empower people and to give back and to help other people. It's like we grow people, and that empowerment not only is good for the soul, for the person, but it touches so many people. So just get in contact with any of us. I don't know where you're going to have our contact information anywhere, but our websites, our phone numbers. I'll give you my personal self number.
Yeah, I'd love that. And that comment, I think, about how, it's definitely helpful for the people who want help or are seeking help. But wow, it's so reinforcing if you've been through something that you can now give back, right? In terms of your own healing and being able to kind of come full circle and share. That can be just so incredibly powerful too. We have a question that's kind of a specific question, but an important one. Somebody asked that they expressed an interest in what mental health resources exist for seniors, particularly around dementia and memory challenge, but don't have family in town. So how are we helping people, and what light might we shine there? Brandi, if you wanted to jump in on that one.
Sure. And Jenni, I know you have some insight, so I'll leave that part open in terms of diagnoses. But we work with the Alzheimer's Association. They have a really great statewide organization. They will come and present to anybody. Actually, we could have them come and present for us for a lunch and learn again. Did that a couple years ago, but they're really, really great about being able to connect people to local resources. And we also use the Area 4 Center for Aging to be able to connect, because a lot of times it's not just a dementia issue, right? It could be a housing, it could be, financial. And we often find some really entangled situations when people utilize our Navigator program and someone comes in with the dementia, with an individual potentially struggling with dementia. So there are great resources out there. The key is to get that early intervention, just like everything else, as soon as you can. You're just gonna have better outcomes. It's the same with your blood pressure. It's the same with diabetes. So if you even think about it, I mean, I saw my mom slipping a little bit, and I said, "Mom, I want you to promise me you're gonna tell your doctor, and just get it checked out. It doesn't hurt to get it checked out." And then I know Jenni had a really good point a little bit earlier when we were talking about it in terms of getting a proper diagnosis.
Well, and I know that when we think of dementia, we think of it as a mental illness because of the effects on the brain. However, there's some big distinctions between dementia and mental illness, which have to be considered in order to get a proper diagnosis. But yes, while dementia does affect mental health, it is not really a mental illness. Rather, it's a disorder of the brain that can cause memory loss, communication. And some of those dementia symptoms are commonly same symptoms that you would see in an elderly person who is having a depression or late onset bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, those types of serious mental illnesses. So diagnosis is important. I would echo Brandi in that Area 4 has case managers and can help direct to other resources and have senior advocates. So if I had a family member diagnosed with dementia and couldn't be there, I would make sure that they were hooked to an advocate with Area 4.
And then I just would like to point out too that it's really, really tough on a family when they're dealing with someone who's going through that. It's really important for the family to make sure and fill their cup and get the help that they need to process that as well.
And I think Brandi brought up a good point, and something that I wanted to tie back to the peer conversation is that for those who might be a family member of someone who suffers from mental health or substance use disorder, there are also peer groups that NAMI does, as well as some of us, regarding family members. And that family support is so crucial in being able to take care of yourself, to be able to take care of your loved one.
Okay. Traumas have a ripple effect. So anytime someone you love is going through trauma, you're going through trauma, and you have to get help to protect yourself and keep yourself resilient in those situations, be it dementia or addiction or mental illness. And I know support groups, NAMI has support groups that help with that. We try to really help parents understand those things. So yeah, trauma has a ripple effect. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. All excellent points. We do have a comment in our chat from Jason McManus, who says, excellent info from all of you. Appreciate the difference you're making in our community. How can those of us who care and support your work help? Any thoughts?
Sure.
Yeah.
You can volunteer. We've got a 24/7 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's tough duty, but if you can do it, and you have the time to give, and you're, centered yourself, and you're ready to help people out in that meaningful and potentially life-saving way. We just started a cohort, but we will be having another one shortly because let's just say we've doubled our call volume twice in the last year. So you can definitely volunteer that way. And I know other people have volunteer opportunities, but I'm sorry, I'm like a bass. I jumped on that because we definitely need as many people as we can get. Thanks for the question, Jason.
Jason, I understand you do this little fundraiser and you do quite well. So any tips you could give to me on fundraising? We do not have a steady funding stream. So we are constantly doing fundraisers, donors, sponsorships, grants. So any tips you can give to me to help keep things going? Because everything we do, we offer free to the community. That's a NAMI signature, is that NAMI wants people, if they're in a crisis, to receive their support and not worry about how they're going to pay for it or if their insurance is going to cover it. So, we're happy to do this, but it has given me some high blood pressure.
And I'd also like to, Jason, you know this, but advocacy with our legislators until things are changed with reimbursement in our state and how we pay for mental health workforce, we will not solve the workforce shortage. Our rates have not gone up since the 70s. And as all of you know, our cost and expense continue to go up. And so very similar to what happened with Red for Ed, when people started speaking up about teachers, we need an uprising in our state about mental health workforce. As Sheri Moore said, we are in a crisis when it comes to workforce. And so until we can pay for the workforce to get qualified professionals in to be able to provide that service. So any chance you get with legislators, we fought this budget session to stay whole when we should have been asking for more funds. Our budget was at risk, so we appreciate those legislators who stepped up to keep us whole in the state. But for example, 988 is out there, but unfortunately this legislative session, the funding did not go with that. And so we need to advocate to be able to put the financial resources into mental health so that we can be able to meet that need. So advocacy, for those of you who have a passion for advocacy, all of us on this panel sit on the North Central Legislative Group for Substance Use and Mental Health. We meet the first Monday of every month at MHA at 10 a.m. And we would love to have anyone participate in that. And so that we can continue to have a collective voice, because without that collective voice, we could have really seen some significant cuts in mental health this year. During a year, we saw so much need increase. Thank you for the question.
I have to step in and echo that I came to Willowstone 3 years ago with a, experience in nonprofit leadership and business administration, and called myself the audit queen. And billing insurance, particularly Medicaid, is cumbersome. And because of that, without United Way funds, Willowstone would not be able to provide counseling. And we've been doing that for 57 years. But there would be no way to be a Medicaid provider and break even. No way. I've tried. It's a problem. Join us.
Very powerful comments. Thank you all. Let's shift gears again and talk a little bit about our overall community. And all of you have examples working with other entities. You're all doing amazingly great work too. As you look at the community, do you see how organizations are supporting mental health needs, or their programs or opportunities that you'd like to highlight as good exemplars of good work that others might be able to potentially adopt for their own use?
Yeah, so I recently spoke with. I just have to throw some props out to Bauer Family Resource. So they asked me to come in and talk a little bit about compassion fatigue, and they were just about to go on break, and then they were unveiling their workplace wellness program. So a lot of people are focusing on mental health and mental wellness. In particular, we know that folks that are struggling with their mental wellness, they tend to leave jobs a lot. They may not be as productive if they're not feeling supported and having their needs taken care of. So Bauer had just unveiled their workplace wellness program, which was pretty awesome. And I just want to throw a shout out to Valley Oaks, because with our partnership with them, we were able to do a little EAP program and provide some mental health services to our volunteers and our staff who, just by virtue of what they do, experience secondary trauma almost every single day. So I know that there are a lot of people that are focusing on mental wellness, and even some of these crusty old, blue collar businesses are kind of picking up what we're setting down, that, hey, this is affecting the bottom line. We want a healthy, happy workforce, and what can we do? And I know that almost everybody on this panel provides education. Thanks to the United Way, we're able to provide our services as well, free of charge to our community members. And one of the things that we focus on a lot is our mental health education and suicide prevention. So we have courses for, 2 hours, 1 hour, 8 hours, 16 hours, however deep you want to get down into it. And that's really, thanks to the people that are on this call who donate to the United Way. So I just want to throw that out there. Bauer's doing awesome.
I would add that prevention is as important as treatment. So neuroeducation and accessible services, making it okay for people to seek those services. So prevention's kind of hard to fund because it's hard to prove what you're preventing. But knowledge of brain development and child development in the support of parents, whether it be an evidence-based program or follow-up support from knowledgeable individuals, really helps create therapeutic households that are conducive to stable brain architecture for their children. So that when I'm looking at Willowstone for the long term, we can really impact children and build better brains by helping parents understand those things. And then I have to say that the common thread for many of our clients, whether it be in psychoeducation or counseling or our Healthy Families Home Visit program, is trauma. And so we always take a look at what traumas that a person has been through, how it impacts their relationships and their lives with other people. And one of the ways that we have kind of addressed that creatively, innovatively, is training therapists in particular in a process called EMDR, so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It shortens the typical length of time that it takes for a client to emotionally settle after a trauma, so that then they can reach their emotional goals quicker. And it was kind of a big jump for us to do, but we have found that it is effective in shortening that case time, making closures happen sooner for that client, and then being able to onboard new people who are waiting for clinical services. So we are proud of that and happy that we're getting back to face-to-face, where that's even more impactful than it can be in telehealth. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to echo what you said about EMDR, you know, someone who actually has gone through that process. I was pretty amazed at how quick it addressed the specific trauma that I was trying to address, and how it could even be done via teleservices. That is a COVID silver lining for us, being able to do more around but just being an individual who has experienced the success of that. So EMDR, I don't know, Jenni, I wouldn't call it new per se, but it is definitely still not out there. It's very different than talk therapy. And it moves faster. I was really blown away by how quick it really targeted that specific trauma. So I'm glad Jenni's training more providers on that.
Yeah, it really, many of our clients, I don't know, several of our clients who are utilizing EMDR are children. So children on telehealth with EMDR is too much, especially if they're new. So, there's a period of time where you really have to set up what the client needs emotionally in order to start the therapy. However, I will say that the beauty of it is that often when you've experienced trauma and you have to state the occurrence that was traumatizing, you just re-traumatize the client. And so EMDR doesn't necessarily require that you tell the trauma, which you just have to recall it, and then you use eye movement as you're doing that. So it really is a kind treatment for therapy. And we're happy to provide it and continue to train.
A couple of points you brought up, I think, love to dig into a little deeper. Talk about the benefits of COVID. That seems strange to say, but one of the side deals, I guess, is the telehealth. Can you delve into that a little deeper and talk about the benefits you've seen there and how that might look moving forward? That is an interesting idea too, I think.
Well, so telehealth is definitely a great tool for our toolbox. It took a lot of time to pivot to 100% telehealth, and it takes a different kind of skill for therapists to reach out to their clients in that way. People don't engage, Zoom meetings are difficult sometimes, right? So people don't engage in therapy quite as long when you're on telehealth sometimes. But they are skills we don't intend to let go of now that we're moving back to face-to-face to some degree. I will say that insurance reimbursement for telehealth, if it's Medicaid, we know it's good for a long while. Zoe probably knows. I know at least till December 31st of this year. But once the emergency order is over for the state, we're kind of worrying about what insurance companies will continue to reimburse for telehealth and which ones will not. And it's a continual moving target. So that is kind of it's a problem, but we'll manage it. But it also is a tool that, no-show rates could maybe be reduced if an insurance company says, yes, you can continue to do telehealth, then I have options for clients who might not feel like they can come to the office safely and not have to cancel appointments, or worse yet, not show up, because each of those places, each of those slots on our schedule book is important because we have people waiting and we need to get those full. So we have always looked at our no-show rate as, to minimize it, to keep those resources flowing. I think that's all. Zoe has more, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I think the silver lining, like I said, was around, for so long, there was an origination fee or an origination requirement in telelegislation in the state, where either the provider or the client had to be office-based, which didn't really solve one of our largest obstacles, well, two of our largest obstacles, transportation, which I know Sheri Moore has done a lot on that around transportation. A lot of our clients that we work with did not have transportation. And so that has helped in bridging that gap. And then also workforce, right? When you have more access to workforce, then we're able to connect people. So we did, as an agency, see our no-show rate go down significantly. We saw our length of wait go down significantly. And we did do a quality of care survey with our clients, and all very positive feedback, both on the staff side and the client side. The other piece for us that was really important, being in some very rural markets, for example, Attica, and then also Otterburn, sometimes broadband, we could not do the privilege of what we're doing right now on this platform. So we had to be able to do phone calls. And so that is where a lot of the language is starting to shift, and it's going to get a little murky for us. Probably spend more time trying to figure it out when we could be spending more time delivering the services. But we'll navigate our way through it. But I do feel, Sheri, I know, you've done a lot of work around the transportation piece, but I think you saw some improvement in that during that time. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, so, the shutdown was a shock to all of us. So we quickly pivoted from an all in-person support groups for individuals and families to all virtual. And then we found people that we've never met before. People that were, isolated and didn't leave their apartments are now jumping on a Zoom meeting and have participated for a whole year on Zoom. So that was our silver lining, is finding people that we haven't met before. So, telehealth, Zoom meetings, I think they should stick around there, because there is a need and for that kind of service.
Thanks, Sheri. We're seeing the same thing at Purdue in terms of the yes and mindset, right? That, that there are definitely a cadre of people who want that face-to-face interaction. That's absolutely phenomenal modality. But there is a cadre that wants to be able to do that virtually. And that was really a beautiful thing, I think, that we were able to do this last year. The other side of that for us, too, was recruiting practitioners. So being able to tap into some of the larger markets in the state, because CAPS, our psychological services on campus, has had challenges, just as we all iterated earlier, in terms of filling some of these roles. So that was actually a good help for us as well. Another direction I'd like to take us as we wrap up here in a little bit. This theme came out, I think, throughout the whole conversation. In fact, we even talked a little bit about it before we jumped online with everyone else. The whole concept of self-care. The work that all of you do can be brutal. Your teams are engaged in things that are very, very difficult. It's important for all of us to keep our mental health positive as well. So what are some of the strategies that you use, either personally or within your organization, to keep to stay as well as we possibly can, particularly with how wild it's been out here in the world this last year?
Well, I'll go. Self-care is one of those things that sort of struggled with, and I don't know if other people in the field do. I think some of my other colleagues and peers, we talk about it. It seems like we know we have the tools in our toolbox, but when we need them the most, they seem so far away. We forget. But what we've done here at the office is we've put up a board, and we, we'll either ask an open-ended question, or we'll, ask people to just write things down in terms of affirmations. But we've made sure that we're sort of transitioning with the Joey Seaman Library to make sure that that's going to remain a library. That's just a wonderful dedicated space that Joe and Bernie Seaman donated to MHA. And we want to make sure that that's a self-care room for our staff and our volunteers, along with the physical wellness room downstairs. For me personally, meditation is huge for me. And if I just spend that 30 minutes before I get started in the morning, and then I force myself to take a walk in the afternoons. But meditation to me is like when you work out, that's what it is for my mind, is just to let the brain kind of have its moment of peace and quiet, and let it run and bring it back, and let it run and bring it back. And just remember that, we're all doing the best we can. But we're all individuals, so what works for me is not going to work for you. Sometimes self-care is just balancing my checkbook. Yes, I still do that. I'm ancient, but I do make sure to get out on that water sometimes. I know I share that with Sheri. She can get out there a little bit more than I can, but I just absolutely love kayaking. It's medicine to me, and I have to force myself sometimes to do that, because otherwise I'm going to get real atrophied. My empathy will atrophy. So that's what I do. That's a little bit of what we do up here.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I realized probably in the first quarter of this year that I have lived through the 2020 pandemic with distraction. So that isn't necessarily mentally healthy. I've just distracted myself with work. And then when things started to calm down, I reintroduced myself to balance and my therapist. So, you really just have to be aware and feeling in the moment. And sometimes it takes exercise and nutrition and movement and fun and laughter to make all of the table legs even. So recently I've, blown up my bike tires and started to ride my bike in the sunshine. And I've learned that I remembered that I really like swing sets at playgrounds. And so I find I was swinging with my teenage daughter the other day, and I was so giddy that when we were done, she said, "Oh, Mom, you're so depressed. Swinging shouldn't make you that happy." But I'm really not. I'm really on my way back up. And, you just you're not always aware. So I identify with all of the people and all of the things.
Well, I know all these ladies on this panel, and I know we are all dedicated to our agencies, and we are the worst people to take care of ourselves, I think. I think it's hard to give ourselves permission to take care of ourselves. So trying to promote and try to live that, like Jenni going out on a bike ride and swinging and on the water, I have to have water. It's in my bones, my soul. So I do a lot of kayaking, and I have dogs. In fact, I have one dog here that I've been bringing into the office, the old girl. And so, I walk by and I give her hugs and kisses, and that just warms my heart and takes my stress level down. But yeah, giving yourself permission to take care of yourself is huge.
And I remember the day that I gave myself that permission. And it was last March, not this past March, but that March when we started hearing the rumblings that things were going to go shut down. And I was out in our newly renovated leadership space with my leadership team. And we were making the tough decision that we were moving everything virtually. At the same time, I got notice as a mom that my kids were going virtually in school. I have at the time, I had a 6th grader, so just transitioning into 6th grade, and also a 4th grader. And I remember sitting in that room and closing my eyes, taking a deep breath and saying, if I don't take care of myself here first in this very moment, I'm not going to be able to take care of my family, my staff, my peers who are on this call, who I love and adore working with. And if I don't do that in this moment and commit to that permission, like Sheri said, then all that falls apart. And so I remember doing that. And every day since that year, I give myself that permission to, whether it be meditate, whether it be just play with my kids and have a dance party, or whether it be just to have a moment of silence, because sometimes that's just driving in the car with nothing on and just hearing the sun, seeing the sun and the noises around. Whatever that was, it's just a moment to really just hone in and say, is it well with my soul? And that's really what it came down to for me when it came to self-care.
Wow, those were all just totally beautiful examples and inspirational examples. And honestly, not one of you said, gee, I book a week-long vacation somewhere to go to the spa and de-stress, right? These are things that any one of us could just make a concerted effort and do. And they were just so beautiful and so incredibly inspirational. So thank you for sharing your personal examples too. I think they go a long way to show how amazing you all are in the work that you do and the support of our community. We have one final question, and I will go back out to the chat in a minute to see if anyone has any final thoughts or comments they'd like to share there. But our final question really talks about kind of dreaming big. If you could wave a magic wand and secure what you need to better support mental health and well-being in our community, what things would be at the very top of your list?
For me, it would be access to schools, access to the young people on their level. Because we need to be upstream. We need to be giving them the tools way before the age of onset, so that they have a standard to so that they have an idea or so that they know when the symptoms begin occurring. They've not heard it for the first time. They have something to compare it to. They have already established a path forward, and then to be able to introduce like bystander training to those kids and just teach them to help themselves way before stage 4. That, to me, that's our biggest. That would be my biggest dream, to just put ourselves right out of a job. Sorry, ladies, we can do something else. I mean, we could start a band. It would be fun. But for me, let's get it early. Let's get into prevention and have access to those kids and help them develop their resiliency skills before they need them.
Those kids need one caring adult. They need one ride or die adult who gets it. And I want every parent to be that person. for their children. So we're working really hard on that. I'd like access to an affordable psychiatrist to be able to treat more of those children with trauma or people that are more moderately mentally ill than we are currently able to do. And I would like we worked during the pandemic because we have space at Howard Center. So we worked on the planning of the renovation of an expansion for Willowstone. And then we cannot afford to do it because construction costs, you might have heard, have gone wackadoo. So I would like the renovation costs to support space for accessible, responsive, services for parent support, emotional support, mind-body activities, programming expansion, to provide insight and purpose in a grassroots way with clinical staff supporting it. Not a long list. Thanks.
Well, not to get political, but I like to get rid of all insurances and go to one payment source, because Jenni and Zoe will they'll make their lives so much easier, but it will also make lives of every citizen easier, because having access to healthcare is vital. And if they don't have the right insurance to cover their prescriptions or their injections or their therapy, they're out on the street. And when they go out on the street, we call the police to help with their mental health crisis. Then they go to jail, and we criminalize mental health. So I want to have health care for all, have access to health care for all, decriminalize the criminal or the mental health system, and treat people with mental health needs the same as we do physical health needs. I always give the example, if you're diagnosed with cancer, you get cards, you get flowers, you get surrounded by support. And when you leave the hospital, you have all the support, right? And rightfully so. Cancer is horrible. But when you go to a psychiatric hospital, you don't get flowers, you don't get cards, and you certainly don't tell anybody once you leave that you have a mental illness. So thanks to the United Way, we provided these sale bags, support after inpatient by the landing, and we give a journal, a pin with a flower on top, community resources, NAMI resources, and we've made a card from NAMI saying, "You're not alone. We're glad you're feeling better," and we all sign it. So we need to treat people with mental health conditions like people.
And I think we all have very big wants. But when I think of the one thing, I just can't help but go to trained and qualified workforce within our state. And so, we can do the trauma, we can do prevention, we can do all of this, but until we have the trained and qualified workforce, we're never going to be able to meet all of that need. And so for me, that wand would be trained and qualified workforce. And the way to do that, like Jenni said, is multifaceted. But until we put kind of our money where our mouth is, like we did with Red is Ed, with our state, and kind of having a unified voice around what mental health workforce is, just to give a shout out to that workforce. They not only went through a pandemic, they went through one of the most divided periods of time, and also the racial injustice. And they went through that while processing about 100+ clients themselves. And so to keep our workforce healthy and whole, we need more qualified, so we're not burning out because unfortunately those numbers are getting a little high. So we're not burning out our current workforce, and we're able to meet those needs. So that would be my wand, is not only workforce, but trained and qualified workforce, whether that's a peer with Sheri and MHA, whether that be a case manager with myself or Bauer, or therapist with Willowstone or Valley Oaks or psychiatrist. I really don't care what kind of workforce it is. We need it all. So that would be my wand to be able to wave.
Very good and excellent points. Before we do wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share? Is there an angle that we haven't talked about, or something you'd really like to get out on the table for our Vanguard group?
I just really want to share. I've had the privilege and the honor to live in a number of communities in the state of Indiana, and I've been part of this community now for 5 years. And if it really wasn't for the United Way offering their voice, their leadership, their funding, and all of you that are on this call, a lot of us, like we have said, could not do the programs that we have. Valley Oaks also has a program that's funded through United Way that helps kiddos in schools that don't have Medicaid. And so I just want to say thank you to United Way and to the group on this call for all that you do for our community, because it really is bigger than us on this panel. It really takes a community, and I do believe in United Way's United Together mission. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, and I'd certainly want to echo that as well. And just to let you all know, I mean, statistically speaking, I don't know how many folks are out there because we can't see that. But we know that a lot of folks are going to be looking at this. So yes, thank you, because your donation matters. It allows us to do the work that we're doing. But please don't be afraid to use our services. We know one in 4 of the families out here are going to be affected by mental health or substance use disorder. And when we are here for you, and I'm not going to go through all the programs that we do, but I will say that we're hiring. So if you know anybody with case management experience or any peers, we're hiring for those positions. But thank you so much for what you do for our community. Thank you for the United Way for giving us the opportunity to help us help others. And really, at the end of the day, that's kind of why we're here. So please reach out anytime for any type of need to any of us four. Thank you.
I echo both of those statements. Thank you for all you do for United Way, and with your, if it's a financial donation, your time. It's all so valuable to the community that we have, and we have a great community. We are full of resources, but yet we still have gaps and we still have waiting lists. So if you have ideas, come and do some coffee with us at the Net Landing or a craft club. It's not the cheesy crafts; it's a cool craft. So we invite you in, and we would love to get to know you personally and develop a relationship. So thank you for all you do.
I agree. Thank you. Willowstone is honored to be a United Way agency partner. And we really feel part of the community as well. And often that is with the leadership of United Way. So thank you so much. Thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of counseling, clinical counseling, are supported from our United Way allocation to 700 plus people every year. So we couldn't do it without you, and you make an impact. Thank you.
Well, on that note, it is just an honor to have been here today with these amazing women and the amazing contributions they and their teams make to our beloved community. So thank you all for taking this hour plus and sharing with us. Again, thank you to our Vanguard donors. You are making such an impact in our community, as you see here today. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks again for checking in with us today, and take care and be well.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks, Beth and
Thanks.
Ebony and everybody.